Karur, Bangalore, Kumbh, what do they have in common? They have Stampedes in common that highlight the lack of crowd management. Will Karur Rally Stampede be the final wake-up call when we are talking about managing the unmanageable? And why NDMA needs to move ahead from guidelines to proper law enforcement to avoid such disasters. Hello and welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh and today we are going to understand that why yet another tragedy has unfolded in our country, why it is so difficult to manage the crowd in our country, why the laws related to it are failing, and what can be done and what must be done to stop such stampedes which have been happening with ever increasing frequency. So let us start with understanding what incident has taken place. So basically, Karur rally was being conducted by the TVK political party where an actor turned politician Vijay was supposed to be there. However, because of delayed presence as well as overcrowding, non-management of exits and administrative lackness, we have seen more than 40 deaths as of now. So basically, a simple political rally event has turned into a tragedy for many households. And if we talk about this particular incident, if we try to figure out the reason behind it, let us look at this given map. So if we talk about this particular rally, it was supposed to be conducted between Erode and Karur highway in an area Vellore Swami region. Now when we are talking about this particular place, the problem here is that this event had permission only for 10,000 people and there was overcrowding because the event was delayed itself. So there was management issue and there was overcrowding as well. And another big problem that was found there, that there was no planning if their things go out of hand. As simple as that. So if we talk about this whole event, there were multiple triggers which led to the stampede, including overcrowding, where it had only permissible limit for 10,000 people, which later, as per the numbers, it went up to 25,000 people. There was delay which was present, infrastructural gaps, that means weak barricading was there, entry and exits were not properly marked, and when we are talking about the extreme panic because of overcrowding, it led to a situation where stampede occurred. Now, if we talk about all these triggers, it will clearly remind you that this is not only one isolated incident that we have seen in our country. In this very year, we have seen multiple incidents when we are talking about, be it the RCB victory stampede that happened in Bangalore, if we talk about Mahakumbh, that has happened. And we have also seen another stampede at Jagannath Puri, and there are many more which I am not mentioning here, but more than 50 stampedes, recorded stampedes where deaths have occurred, have taken place in our country in this very year itself. That means our country's system, administrative framework, legal framework is absolutely failing at crowd management. Who is responsible for it? Who looks into it? Let's try to understand this. So if we talk about the constitutional and legal framework related to crowd management, first we find its presence in fundamental rights, where it is a constitutional right in Article 19. Can you tell me in the comment section what is broadly Article 19 about? So in Article 19(1)(b), there is a clear fundamental right which gives you the right to peacefully assemble without arms. Now in this very fundamental right, there is a restriction as well. That means this is not an absolute right, it can be restricted, and the reason or the ground for restriction is public order, security and morality. Apart from that, there are certain regulatory powers as well. For example, Police Act of 1861, which regulates lawful assemblies, their police permissions have to be taken, and authorities are allowed to impose certain conditions based on public convenience, based on public order, etc. And third, we have Disaster Management Act of 2005. Now, this act focuses on safety, emergency response, traffic control and disaster mitigation. And based on this, National Disaster Management Authority has given guidelines for crowd management. So, this is the most broad framework that we have, the most going to framework we have, and the most prevalent framework that we see across when we are talking about especially crowd management, which seems to be miserably failing in our country as of now. Now, when we talk about NDMA guidelines, they are very detailed. They have a proper breakup when we are talking about pre-event planning, during the event planning and post-event planning as well, where it talks about that how capacity planning should be done. It also talks about the risk assessment. It talks about preparedness planning, if there is any incidents, response to be taken, and also capacity building. So, there are proper NDMA guidelines. Now, the question arises then, why still such incidents are taking place? Such incidents are taking place because these guidelines are not being implemented. And why they are not being implemented, why they are being taken so lightly? The problem here is these NDMA guidelines, they do not have a legal backing as laws. Whatever is the framework which requires detailed work at the organizers and people who are making the event happen, be it in form of understanding the type of event, the number of people expected, be it the crowd motive, venue, etc. All the requirements which are clearly made, understood, highlighted, detailed in the NDMA guideline, they are not being followed and there is no repercussion which is associated to it. If you will look at the guideline, I will break it down for you. When we are talking about pre-event planning, it talks about risk assessment, it talks about capacity planning, it talks about infra design, what is to be kept in mind, what kind of machineries. After infra design, we also have a proper guideline about institutional setup. So, if I have to break it down for you, the risk assessment is basically to understand and map the hazards that exist, making a crowd profiling, focusing on proper crowd profiling, which we have seen here also in terms of crowd expected, crowd motives that exist. When we are talking about capacity planning, it basically outlines what is the maximum limit, minimum limit, what is the expected number of people, how that can be managed, and if there is an adverse scenario, what can be done. If more people turn up, what can be done, what should be done, that is also taken into consideration. Infra design includes multiple exits, multiple entries, proper barricading. When we are talking about institutional setup, it talks about unified control room. There has to be proper command system that comes in. So, these are the proper instructions that have been given in NDMA guidelines. When we are talking about during the event part, the guidelines clearly highlight that there has to be a clear focus on communication, flow management, monitoring, constant monitoring, and also preparedness in terms of anything that goes in the wrong direction. So, medical preparedness is also called in. And after that, post-event is also an important part where the event has to be understood in terms of data that has turned out. We need to see that what exit, entry, choke points existed, what were the problematic areas or what are the lessons that need to be learned. So, that needs to be implemented. And these guidelines serve as the only detailed framework that we have in terms of crowd management. As I highlighted, the problem itself is the fact that it has no legal backing in terms of being a law itself, and probably that's why we are taking it so lightly, because with so many deaths, such tragedies occurring every month in major cities and minor cities, it should be like a wake-up call for not just administrative system but also for the public, so that they can seek some accountability, answerability, that if we have such a proper functioning mechanism, why it is not being implemented. So in this very context, let us now talk about that what can be done to ensure that even such guidelines existing, then how they are to be implemented, how the crowd management can be actually executed rather than just being on the paper in form of just guidelines. So when we are talking about what can be done, we have to understand that there are multiple levels related to crowd management. The first part comes with the planning itself. Planning and basic infrastructure needs to be ensured. How that can be done? That can be done by enforcing strict capacity norms. That means if the police is granting the permit of 10,000 people, which happened in Karur Stampede, then there shouldn't be more public. That means there shouldn't be overcrowding. That's where management becomes responsible for it. If we are talking about infrastructure, it should have exit, entry points, limited choke points, proper command system, unified control room, proper sturdy barricades, and well-handled pathways. For example, if we talk about the recent stampede that took place in Haridwar, that was because of there were limited number of exits and there was a rumor regarding electricity pole falling off, and which led to panic, and there were limited exits and it led to a stampede like situation. Then when we talk about planning and infrastructure, it needs to be topped up with proper technology and also real-time monitoring, which both of these are part of NDMA guidelines. We just need to make sure that monitoring comes with better technology where we are using AI-based crowd sensors and drones. There is a proper live feeds and central control room which can manage any emergency that comes at the end. Proper alerts if there is any problem, if the density of the crowd increases, if it goes beyond a certain given threshold, then there should be a proper announcement, proper management that can be done. Apart from that, there needs to be a proper focus on institutional framework. So when we are talking about institutional framework, the crowd management plan or the NDMA guidelines that we have, even that works because they are genuinely good. The problem only is that their implementation is not mandatory, and furthermore it also has no repercussions if they are not implemented. So there has to be a mandatory crowd management plan for every large event that is occurring. Apart from that, there should be an incident commander with authority which can halt the inflow of public if things are getting out of hand. And most important, there needs to be a proper multi-agency coordination, because usually the permissions are given by police or civic bodies, but their alignment with other agencies is not done. Then we have an important component that is missing out in NDMA guidelines is the awareness part related to public safety. When we talk about campaigns which can raise awareness how to practice safe behavior in such environment where you have to avoid rushing, follow proper guidelines, follow marshal, know the exit routes, know the choking points, and understand if there are SMS alerts or there is some guidance that can be seen through apps or through mobile phones to be used smartly. And that is why when we will have all the stakeholders involved, when we are talking about administration, public, that is when we will be able to see that actually we are able to manage the unmanageable, which is the real cause of such tragedies which are unfolding in front of us. Lastly, but most importantly, it needs to come with a rigid transformation where NDMA guidelines are becoming legally binding standards, and they are regularly checked also through audits, proper accountability, and if there are any lapses, there should be proper penalizing so that to ensure that nobody lacks or nobody takes this frivolously, and the focus is on implementation and proper execution of crowd management plan that already exists in our hand in true sense. Now I'll leave you all with a practice question here. You can tell me the answer in the comment section below. If you have any doubts, you can put it down in the comment section. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.